Hi, this is Cynthia McMullen with Alaska Institute of Oriental Medicine, Acupuncture, and Massage Therapy. Today I have a beautiful guest. My guest is Monika Swan. And Monika is a regular person who is doing something very extraordinary. And I asked her to be my guest today because I wanted her to share her very raw experience, her very real experience in something that most of us would find beyond devastating. And she is going through this right now in a way that is so amazing and so powerful. And it can be such an example to so many people that I think that this has to be heard. So, Monika, your son was recently killed.
Yes, that's right.
And for you to even be sitting here today, the way that you are, and going through, going through school and going through different things, it's just amazing. So, if we start back a little bit, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Alaska. I was born and raised here, and I grew up doing a lot of sort of farmy type things. I grew up doing 4-H and raising animals and riding horses and lots of outdoorsy type things as well. Mm-hmm.
And how about your family growing up? Anything special, unusual? Ordinary?
Well, I love my family very much. I'm grateful to know to have a lot of great people in my family. I will say, like a lot of us, I grew up with a lot of dysfunction in my family. So I had a bio dad that I didn't meet till I was a teenager. Grew up around some alcoholism, things like that. So I've definitely had to do a lot of soul searching and looking in myself to learn how to heal old patterns that I don't want to be there anymore, and how to really make choices about my life. And I guess by that I mean I've really had to learn how to actually choose who I want to be and what I want my life to be like, and then how to make that happen.
And so then fast forward a bit, and you were a single mom.
Yes.
And you had a teenage son.
Yes. Yeah, so my son, Gunnar Swan, oh, beautiful soul, just biggest heart. Since his passing, it's been amazing to hear all of the people from all ages, little kids on up to more elderly people come up and just tell me how Gunnar touched their lives, how loving he was, his generosity. He had a really unique spirit, especially for his age. He had a really, really big heart. But I actually had Gunnar 5 days after I turned 18, so I was a young mom, single mom. And my parents did give me a lot of help raising Gunnar, so I'm very thankful my dad gave Gunnar a good male role model. But things were tough with Gunnar a lot, being a young single mom like that. And we actually had a couple of really rough years when he turned, I think he was about 15 when we really started having some issues. And we had a few really rough years, and Gunnar actually wasn't even living with me for the last couple of years. And then last year, it would have been on his birthday. Gunnar's birthday was January 21st. And on his 18th birthday last year, I went and watched him do a motocross ice race. So my son was a total motorhead. He loved anything mechanical. He was constantly working on dirt bikes. He was notorious. I'd come into the house and there'd be a dirt bike engine being torn apart in the living room or things like that. He was great that way. But anyway, so on his 18th birthday, I went and watched him do this ice race, and it was a really big deal to him. And I was really happy to be there that day. And I made a decision that day that I was just going to love my son. And don't get me wrong, I've always loved my son immensely, but this was different. I had made a decision that I was going to unconditionally love him, that I was going to love him as he was, for who he was, that unless I saw him doing something that I thought was really dangerous or really going to get him in trouble, I wasn't even going to say anything. I was just going to be his support and his cheerleader, and that I was just going to choose. I mean, talking about making choices for my life, I decided that I was going to choose to have as healthy of a relationship as I could for my part with my son. And I really just, I really made a choice with that. I decided that I was just going to choose to try to always see things as positively as I could with our relationship, that I was going to just be as loving and supportive to him as I could, that I was just going to cheer him on. And I made this decision, of course, not knowing that I would lose him a year and 6 days after that, after making that choice. And so I know that, you know, I've had so many people ask me, and they say, and I may start to cry a little bit through this, but that, you know, they'll say, well, you know, how are you staying so strong? Which isn't entirely true. I break down a lot at home on my own. But, you know, they ask me how I'm making some of the choices that I am right now. And the thing is, I look back on this last year, and by the way, Gunnar and I had an amazing last year. We ended up growing so close. We got through all the problems that we'd had. I chose to just absolutely unconditionally love my son, and he reciprocated. We talked about the deepest, most wonderful things. We shared our hearts with each other this last year, a lot. And I can honestly say that when my son died at 6 days after his 19th birthday, that I don't think there's anything that I didn't get to say to him that I really wanted him to know. And he had told me how grateful he was for me, and how much he loved me, and how thankful he was for me as his mom. And I knew so much about my son's heart when he died, and he knew so much about my heart for him, that I think that's a big part of the reason that this is in any way, shape, or form bearable. And so to rewind, I cannot imagine if I had made different choices about that unconditional love, if my son and I hadn't been in the place that we were.
So let me ask you with that did you say something to him? Did you say, hey, I'm going to change the way I'm living with you, the way I'm reacting, or just being with you? Did you tell him, or did you just do it and he noticed? What happened in there?
So it started with my actions. I just started doing things that were loving. And as far as, like, it could be taking him a new coat because he needed it, or you know, dropping off pizza at his work for him, you know, surprising him with pizza, showing up to his races and, you know, bringing him food, whatever, just loving things like that. And I think it's hard sometimes, because in our relationships, you know, you can try to do something nice for someone that you've been having issues with maybe, and then if they don't receive it quite the way we hope, or maybe they even make just a snide comment or something, you know, we can easily feel offended and alter our actions. And when I made a choice to just unconditionally love my son and just be there no matter what, and like I said, I guess I don't mean to make it sound like I was unloving before, but, you know, it's hard dealing with teenagers sometimes. And so just when
just a little.
Yeah, just a little. So when I really made that choice to change our relationship, I decided I was showing up with food no matter what. I decided I was going to be there cheering him on no matter what. And I decided to ignore anything that might offend me, even, you know, imagined or not on my part. Like, you know, I just decided to just let that go. And so it started more with my actions, and I think Gunnar really saw through what I was doing that I was clearly making an effort and a change.
He sensed the genuineness behind it.
Definitely. And sometimes I would feel like I was bugging him a little bit with text or whatever, telling him, you know, hey, I love you, have a good day, whatever. But I decided, oh, well, I would rather have him be bugged and know that I said that than not do it. And pretty soon, and then once we got onto a little more solid footing with our relationship again, then we were able to start having discussions about maybe, you know, issues that we'd had in the past, things that maybe we needed to heal. You know, we both kind of asked each other for forgiveness for different things, and I can't tell you how much that means once you lose your child. It means so much to know that you've had those conversations. Some of them were very hard conversations. I mean, I have an ego like everybody else, and it's hard for me sometimes to own up and say, oh yeah, I did that wrong, I'm sorry, you know, or I'm sorry I made that choice when you were little. But the fact is, we did have those conversations, even if they were hard. So,
and how did he started to respond at a certain point? How long did that take for him to, or what happened with him? How did he notice?
Well, I think I was just there so much with the texting and with bringing him things and with, you know, with just really being there and trying to show my support, that I think he really started to see it. And then, you know, I'm trying to remember. I want to say maybe we got together at like family parties and things like that. And I guess I don't remember exactly clearly. It, you know, it was one of those things. It just kind of starts to flow and things start to happen. I can tell you that one day I don't know, I want to say maybe it was in the fall. It was, at the latest, it was last summer. Gunnar invited me to a movie, which was amazing to me because I was like, oh, my 18-year-old son is inviting me to a movie. So, of course, I went with him. I was really happy. And while we were waiting for the previews, he just shocked me, and he started saying how he was sorry for some things, and that he understood that I had tried my hardest as a mom, and he was thankful for me being his mom. And since then we had other conversations, but I guess what I'm trying to say is it's amazing to me when we drop the walls around our hearts, and when we choose to go ahead and be vulnerable, and when we choose to maybe be honest and vulnerable about our mistakes or our shortcomings, and be real about those things, you know, and own them and apologize and try to move on in a healthy way. It's amazing what can happen, you know, how relationships can heal.
What's one of the things that you apologized for as a mom?
Well, I had been in an abusive marriage for a while, not with Gunnar's father, but with an ex-husband of mine, and that had really hurt Gunnar a lot. And so I wanted to apologize to him, and I did, for choosing that relationship and for putting him through those things. And then I also tried to be really honest with him about what it might look like to try to heal from those choices that I had made and the things that I had brought into his life through those choices, you know, to try to kind of somewhat give him a roadmap. I mean, obviously it was his choice to follow it or not, but I didn't want to just leave him hanging. You know, I wanted to say, yeah, when you were a kid, I made these poor choices, and, you know, they had an impact on you. They had an effect in your life, and maybe this is how I'm healing from these things now, and maybe these are ways you could heal. So
yeah, that's amazing right there, because there's so many people who are in that situation who never get to hear that. Yeah. Gunnar and I really did. We got to talk about so much. I mean, we ended up being really close there at the end. I mean, we were really close when he was young. We were really close for many years, but then we had that few years of hard times when he was a teenager. But then at the end, we were really close again, and I mean, I have the gift of even knowing that, you know, he had told me that he wasn't afraid to die, that he felt very, you know, Gunnar was very spiritual, and he felt very connected to God, the universe. He wasn't afraid to die. He knew that he would continue on in some form, and that would be good. And I mean, as a mom now, I mean, what a gift that is, you know. Where did he get those beliefs?
Well, I'm very spiritual too, and so I always, when he was younger, I would read the Bible to him when we went to church, and then as he got older, my spiritual beliefs kind of morphed. You know, I'm very spiritual, but not so religious anymore. But it was very ironic because Gunnar and I made those same changes without talking to each other about it, and so that was something we actually shared this last year. We would just blow each other away sometimes because we'd be talking, and he'd be like, yeah, I can feel this energy when I'm here, or this is happening, or I've had this revelation, and it was really cool to share that with him and be like, oh, me too, you know. And so we were just on the same path with that at the same time, which is a really cool thing to share. Yeah.
And so, what are your beliefs about? Like he said, he wasn't afraid to die.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, I I'm not afraid to die either, because I believe that in whatever form, you know, I will go on to exist in, I believe it's going to be absolutely good. And I believe that however Gunnar exists now, that it's absolutely good. You know, I'm positive that I feel his spirit around me sometimes, and that it's nothing but peaceful and loving and joyful, and you know, he's okay. It's me and everyone here that's still suffering so horribly, but he is good. He's good. You know, it's like, I guess I don't have, I guess I would say, a really committed view. Like I kind of believe in, you know, reincarnation, and I guess I don't feel like I have to understand all of that completely. I just have a strong faith that whatever it is that is next is really good, and that there is a next dimension of some kind, and that it's good. So I don't need to worry about that, and I don't need to worry about Gunnar.
Now, the night that you found out that he had been killed, when you heard that, where did you go?
Well, so it was very, very unexpected. I had actually flown out the night that it happened. I had flown out to go have a wonderful little short girls' vacation in California with one of my best friends. And I had actually left Gunnar to house sit for me, and with some of his friends, which he normally did, that was common. And I got on the plane that night to leave state, and I had a ton of anxiety, and I'll be honest, it was to the point where I thought my plane was going to crash that night. Like, it didn't even occur to me that something wrong was going to happen to Gunnar. I thought like something was going to happen to me. I felt like I was leaving Alaska forever. I felt like I was leaving family forever. But I thought it was something that was going to happen to me.
But you had an unusual
definitely,
okay.
definitely. Even when the plane was getting ready to leave the tarmac, you know, and it's like, you know, revving up to leave the tarmac and take off to leave Alaska. And I'm not usually much of a public crier. Even through this with losing Gunnar, I'm not a huge public crier. And so when I say that I started crying on the plane, like, that was big. I was crying on the plane a little bit because I just knew that something was, I felt a huge sense of loss. But again, I thought it was me. I was kind of shocked our plane landed when I got to Seattle. So I had a sense that something was happening, but it didn't occur to me at all that it was Gunnar. And anyway, so after all that, I made it to California safely, met my beloved friend. We were having a great time. And we were woken up in our Airbnb that morning. We were in Joshua Tree, California, and we were woken up by a phone call. And a trooper told me over the phone that Gunnar had been shot. And I asked if he was alive, and the trooper said no. And everything just went kind of numb at that point. One of my biggest fears, Gunnar has some close friends of his, one in particular that I really care about a lot, and I care about all of them, but one in particular that was kind of like a brother to him. And one of my first thoughts was, are all the other kids okay? And it was hard, not understanding what had happened, not having any context, with like what happened here. I mean, when you hear your child is shot, it's like, what on earth, So there were a lot of unanswered questions. But I found out relatively quickly that Gunnar had been shot and that all the other kids were okay. He had been house sitting for me, and again, I didn't know if it was at my house. I didn't know what had happened. But once I found out that Gunnar was gone, and I knew obviously there was no changing that, he was gone. There wasn't anything I could do about that. And once I knew the other kids were okay, I kind of checked out for a little bit. I felt so numb, and my good friend, who luckily has a lot of wisdom, she was the kind of person that if you have to go through something like this, she was the kind of person that you want by your side, and she's very wise. And with my permission, she took my phone because it was just blowing up with messages. She took my phone and kind of took that over for me to make sure she could field any calls I really needed to take. And she literally loaded me up and got coffee. She even went to my suitcase and pulled out clothes because I couldn't even think about how to grab clothes, She went to my suitcase, she told me to put on clothes, and she drove me up to Joshua Tree National Park. And if you've ever been there, it's just this beautiful, amazing place, and it's filled with cacti and these really neat rock formations. And it is warm out there. Like, the temperature itself is warm, but it's also a very warm feeling place. And she took me out there, and we just started walking. And it was out there that I thought to myself, as I was walking out there in Joshua Tree, I thought, I always wondered how on earth people do this, like this kind of a thing, how they go through this. And I thought, I guess this is how they do it. They do it, you just keep going. And so that was the first place that I kind of started to accept that my son was gone, because I've learned that the acceptance is a process. I still don't think I've totally accepted it yet. Like, it's a process. It's kind of like peeling back layers. You get through one layer. Because I think it's such a shock to our hearts. It's such a shock to who we are as people that I don't think we could take in the full trauma all at one time, So you peel back a layer and you start to accept that, and then you peel back another layer. At least that's how it's been for me. But one of the big things that I was faced with once I got a little bit more information was that Gunnar had actually been shot by a friend of his, not a really, really close friend, but a friend. And the more details that I got about it, it was just so hard for me to wrap my head around the whole situation. Gunnar was borrowing my car, my Jeep, and he had been driving some kids home. And there was another, Gunnar was 19 when he died, and there was another 19-year-old sitting in the back seat behind him. And the kid pulled out a gun. I don't think the other kids in the car even knew that he had a gun. I'm not sure about that. He pulled out they had been having a great time. They were laughing and having a wonderful time. They'd had a wonderful evening. And out of nowhere, this is my understanding anyway, is that out of nowhere the kid pulled out a gun and cocked it and shot Gunnar in the neck. And so it was a little bit easier for me to try to process this when I thought that it was completely an accident. It was a little bit easier for me to deal with, because now my son was gone, but then I also had this other young man who had hurt my son that I also had to deal with feelings about,
And did you know him?
I wouldn't say that I knew him. I know that I've met him, and I worked in schools for quite a few years, and so I actually remember him all the way back from middle school. He went to a middle school with my son where I worked, and I don't actually remember interacting with him at the time, but I knew his face, and that all just makes it so much more. When you work in the school with the kid years before, like it's a small town that we live in, So I didn't know him, but I had met him, and so that was really hard. I was out walking in that desert in Joshua Tree when it was the first time I remember when it sunk in that maybe my son had actually been murdered. And there was something about an accidental death as opposed to a murder that was really hard for me to accept. And I remember standing there in the desert, and we were watching some beautiful little wild rabbits hop around, and I don't know, I think there was just so much peace in that place and in that scene that I was looking at, that maybe it allowed me to finally let in that information that maybe Gunnar had been murdered, because that was like a knife to the heart for me as a mom, and it was kind of interesting, even though I've been really angry about, Gunnar not being here, and even though I've been really angry about feeling like I wanted so many more years with him, I haven't, and I've been angry with the kid that shot him. I mean, I've been angry with the kid's recklessness and the choice that he made, but I haven't hated him. I've heard some people make really hateful comments, like that they hope that he gets hurt in prison or something, and that really hurts my heart because I don't want him to be hurt. If he's not safe to be around other people, then I do want him to be locked away because I don't want him to hurt someone else. But I don't actually want him to be hurt, And And it actually worried me for a while because I kept on thinking that I was maybe in denial or in shock, because people kept saying the anger is going to come, the anger is going to come. And I was kind of worried, not knowing, like I was like, oh my gosh, am I okay now? But am I going to be overcome with hate later? And at this point, even though every day, it's like I said, it's like peeling back layers. I never quite know every day, like, oh, I'm going to be dealing with something new that's hard. But I just don't think the hate is there. I just don't think that it is. And I'm so thankful for that.
I know, to be around you, you have this energy around you that's just beautiful and peaceful, and I don't feel hate in any essence of any cell of your being.
Thank you.
And that part is fascinating in a way, deeply touching. How do you not go there?
Well, I don't understand why why we've lost Gunnar when he was only 19. I mean, that's so sad to me. I mean, I wanted so many years with him, as did so many people. But for some reason, this is when Gunnar is gone. And there's nothing that's going to change that now. Hate is certainly not going to bring Gunnar back, I used to struggle when I was younger, quite a bit with bitterness and anger and unforgiveness and different things. And while of course I still struggle with some of that, a lot of that I've been able to change in myself. And I went into this, losing Gunnar, really not having any idea what to do, what to expect, how to handle this. I mean, I just sat here and I thought, oh my gosh, this is my life now, and how on earth do I do this, And really my bedrock through that, my stability, my solid place when everything else really just felt so unstable, was kind of that idea that love never fails. If you go with love, you're not going to do the wrong thing. And so even though I don't understand any of this with Gunnar, I don't understand losing Gunnar, I don't understand what happened with the other with the kid that shot him. There's so much that I don't understand. But two things that I do know are that love never fails and that nothing good comes from hate. And a big part of there were two things that really have pushed me forward with that through this. And one is that if I hadn't chosen love this last year with Gunnar, we'd all be seeing a very different situation with me losing Gunnar right now. I chose love, and Gunnar chose love. Gunnar reciprocated that love to me. He was amazing. He was just incredible. And I can't imagine if I hadn't chose love this last year. And so now going through this, all I thought was like, I'm just so grateful that was the choice that both Gunnar and I made. And I can't imagine now, I'm like, what else can I do that I know is going to be right or okay besides try my best to choose love now? And so that's why, I guess, to kind of answer your question, it's like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. I don't know. I don't know what every day is going to bring. I don't know if I'm going to be a total mess or a total wreck one day and okay the next. I don't know. But I just know that love is always, you don't get it wrong with love.
And there's a peace with that. I can see it in your eyes.
Yeah, there is. Oh, and I said there were two things. I gave you one. So the second big reason that I'm committed to just trying to choose love through this is that because of who Gunnar is. Gunnar had a huge heart, and he had just turned 19, and he already wanted to help younger kids. I told you he was really into motocross and the dirt bikes, and he really wanted to help younger kids learn how to ride and things. And he had just turned 19, so we were only seeing him at this very, I don't mean to any offense to my wonderful son, but at a very immature stage of life. And even at that age, he knew to choose love. And I just thought, it's already such a huge trauma and such a tragedy that we lost Gunnar. But it would be a huge wound and a huge further tragedy to then have hate and bitterness be the overriding thing that was to come out of his death. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that what my son would want is love to come out of his death. And so, so that was huge for me as I've tried to move forward, because I keep thinking, I kind of laugh to myself sometimes, because you see the bracelets that say, what would Jesus do? Instead, I found myself a lot, and no offense to I love Jesus, but no offense to Christians, but of but I've found myself thinking, what would Gunnar do? Because what would Gunnar want me to do right now? And he'd want everybody to love each other out of this.
That's so perfect. And you had so many circumstances throughout the whole situation, finding yourself in a place that was the perfect place to experience what you did with the perfect person.
Yes.
And then the gift, just the pure gift of choosing unconditional love before that. And I think that whole experience that you've shared is so important today, because we have so many things going on where there are so many people that find anger and hate so easy. And there's a lot of talk about, open your heart, do it to come from love. Love is the way. And sometimes that's talk, sometimes it draws a lot of people, but then how do you really do it? And you're doing it. You're not even trying to do it or thinking about it, you're just doing it and finding the way. But by your example, I know the people around you, you just sense, wow, there's something really powerful going on here. Let's pay attention.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for doing it in that way and being so pure about it.
Thank you. I would have to thank Gunnar for that. He just, I know, and I believe that he's around me so much, and Gunnar has always had a much bigger heart than I have, and so I feel like through this I am trying to, rise to, who he is and what he would want to embrace, and it's really cool to be able to do this today, because it's a way of trying to again say, this is what Gunnar, this is what he would want, this is the best and most high way that we could honor him, that we can honor his life, is to love each other and to just seek those things in our lives.
Just love more.
Love more. Love more, yes.
Did you have to forgive anything at all? Did you have to forgive the kid that shot him?
Again, back to the idea that I'm processing things in layers. It won't surprise me if at some point in the future, if I need to deal with some forgiveness, maybe that just hasn't touched my heart yet. At this point, I think that a lot of this comes from my personal beliefs about just being able to trust God, the universe, knowing that there's good in whatever dimension we go to next. I guess because I have such solid faith in that, I hate to say that it was Gunnar's time, but I mean, I think that the really sad but true fact of the matter is we do lose people. We lose people in this life. And as much as we want to, outlive our kids, and, it's terrible to me to think of not having grandchildren, not seeing Gunnar grow older. I mean, that's absolutely heart-wrenching to me. But the truth is we're not guaranteed that, we're not. And I'm so thankful for the 19 years that I had with Gunnar, and for getting to be a part of such an incredible person's life. That is just such an honor. And I've kind of had to, because for a while I was a little bitter, like, why did I lose him now at this age? Then I realized we're not guaranteed a certain number of years on this earth, and for some reason, this is how Gunnar went. And there's a part of me that may just always have to try to be okay and at peace with not understanding that. And I think that's okay.
So if you needed to give advice to anybody else who was going through this, what would you say?
I would say be patient and loving with yourself. Just be so patient and be so loving, because this is a huge, huge wound, and it affects every cell of who you are. And so just to, I guess that, we're talking about being more loving, but be loving with yourself, because this is a very hard walk. It's a very hard journey. It's not, we will heal. Those of us that are going through this, we can heal, but it is a journey and it's hard. And so just be patient and be loving and be kind to yourself.
The biggest takeaway that I'm getting from what you said so far is in the very beginning when you talked about choosing to love unconditionally and to just start doing that. That sounds, what if we lived our lives like that now?
Yes. Yes.
And just made the choice to do that.
Yes. It's very true. Yeah.
Do you have anything that you'd like to say to leave with?
I don't think so. Just thank you so much for having me on here and allowing me to talk about my wonderful son. Thank you.
Yeah, well, this is so inspiring, and I thank you so much. And just for the message, for putting it into the field, for being one of the people who is, by example, showing how love more is I don't want to say easy, but it's so possible.
Yes.
And I think that part of your experience went so perfectly because you were living from that direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, and thank Gunnar also.
Yes, thank you, Gunnar. Thank you so much. All right.